pretty good. So that's very nice. Tell a little bit about yourself before you do the introduction.
Sure. So I'm Addie Eamon, and I'm a Master's of Real Estate Development student in my last semester. I moved to Utah for the program that you've never heard of.
Specifically for this program, right? Where'd you come from? Texas?
I was actually in Italy for 3 years before this. So, and I knew I had been in architecture, got frustrated, went to Italy, got reinvigorated.
So frame this, you're not going to find too many giving up Italian lifestyle to come up and study at the university, but I'm predicting it's the beginning of a trend. Abby?
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Mr. Kevin YEANAPLOS. He graduated from the David Eccles School of Business in 1983 with a degree in accounting. He's a certified public accountant, accredited business valuation, and he's also an accredited senior appraiser. He's earned a reputation as a nationally renowned business valuation expert, along with cultivating this growing industry. So after a brief foray into public accounting, Mr. YEANAPLOS knew that wasn't quite the right fit, and he found his passion in business valuation. He's the Director of Valuation Services at Brueggemann & Johnson YEANAPLOS, a niche consulting firm with offices in Seattle and Tucson, and one of the largest firms of its type in the country. He's valued over 1,000 businesses and specializes in valuation, financial analysis, and litigation support. He's testified as an expert witness in both state and federal courts and has been recognized as a leading expert in accounting and valuation. Mr. YEANAPLOS is also an educator and a lecturer. He's authored curriculum and instructed programs for the American Institute of CPAs, the American Society of Appraisers, and the National Association of Certified Valuation Analysts, as well as the State Bar of Utah and Arizona. As one of 7 faculty members for the American Institute of CPAs, National Business Valuation School, he's taught courses in 36 states and 72 cities, and is a past recipient of the Instructor of Distinction Award. His work has been published in the Journal of Forensic Accounting, the Journal of Accountancy, and he is co-author of the 2006 Financial Valuation Manual. As a volunteer, Mr. YEANAPLOS is very generous with his time and serves on both the AICPA National Accreditation Commission and the Arizona Society of CPAs Business Valuation Committee. He contributes his expertise as a member of the American Arbitration Association's Commercial Panel and of the ASA's International Board of Examiners. Mr. YEANAPLOS was the founding chair of the AICPA's Business Valuation Committee and established the AICPA Business Valuation Conference, now in its 10th year. In 2006, he was named the AICPA's Business Valuation Volunteer of the Year. However, Mr. YEANAPLOS, his professional accomplishments don't depict the full story. He's also a husband of 31 years, a father, and recently became a grandfather. An event in 2003 reinvigorated his passion for music and helped him to, quote, find new lyrics in his life. This episode influenced him to focus more on family and music and led him to a more balanced life. He has passed his love of music on to his 4 children, all of whom play the guitar, while his wife accompanies them on piano. He has recorded 2 albums and also works as a journalist for the Examiner, reviewing concerts and interviewing musicians. In this capacity, he's been behind the scenes with countless music legends and emerging stars. Mr. YEANAPLOS has drawn a correlation between the challenge of proper business valuation and the challenge of composing a song. Both require interpretation of ideas, communication with the audience, and ultimately serve as a creative outlet for Mr. YEANAPLOS. Musician, journalist, educator, family man, and nationally renowned business valuation expert. Clearly, Kevin YEANAPLOS is a complex individual who has mastered the art of balance. Hold on, because we are going to zoom out and take a look at the world from 50,000 feet through Kevin's eyes. He's going to help us grow not only as professionals, but as people.
Some of that is actually true. Can you hear me okay? I've got the lavalier on. Is it working?
It actually doesn't come across in the room. It's just for the recording.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me now? Keeping with our discussion. I really was very interested in the discussion on the Wall Street Journal for a couple of reasons. For one thing, Dean Randall talked about some of his early experiences as an auditor, and it gave me flashbacks because I was thinking about sitting there asking questions as part of my analytical review. And of course, I came out of school, there were still big 8 accounting firms. I worked for Pete Marwick. And I thought everything the controller was telling me had to be true. And so he would give me an answer, and I thought, yeah, that's it. Go back and write down my, on the work papers, and of course the senior would look at it and say, that doesn't make any sense. So what's the real takeaway from the whole discussion you just had on the Wall Street Journal? Don't believe everything you hear, and also don't believe everything you read. I think one of the most important things that you're doing here that I really appreciate about this class, what little I know about it and I'm learning more, is it's teaching you to be critical thinkers. That is the most important skill you will get in life, and probably the most important thing that you learn in school, how to be critical thinkers. I remember, as I was preparing for this, distinctly my senior year sitting in Ken Haney's income tax class, and I think Dr. Haney just passed away fairly recently. And he said, remember these times because at some point in your life you'll realize they were the best times of your life. And I also can just about guarantee you, I didn't hear a lot of groans, but I know there were people thinking, give me the razor blade now. Because it's got to get better than this. And the easy thing to say is it does. It gets so much better than this. Don't let these be the best times of your life, because there's so much more out there to learn. Learn to ask questions if you don't already. I hear this so much. I'm voting for so-and-so because I like their hair, or something silly like that. I can't imagine any of you students here ever making that kind of a decision, but learn to think critically. That's going to serve you so well. The other thing that I thought about as we were having the discussion, in what I do, I've been spending all of my time for the last 20 years in the valuation of closely held businesses. We don't do a lot of work for publicly traded companies outside of, we do work related to fair value and determining what the values of acquisitions are and things like that. But most of my work is related to privately held companies, closely held. And the standards that exist for what I do require, or strongly suggest at the very least, that we look at the public market as a proxy for what the value of a privately held company is. Well, think about the discussion we just had about the public market. There are so many moving parts, and there are so many forces at work there that frankly don't have anything to do with the financial performance of a company. And so, in some respects, boy, that sure doesn't make sense to use the public market as a proxy. That's the type of thing that I deal with every day in what I do. How sensible is it in using that as a proxy? So that's one of the things I want to talk about. Abby mentioned that when I came out of school, I don't know if I should admit this. In fact, I want to back up for just a second. Do you remember me telling you that you can't believe everything you hear? I want to give you this disclaimer right up front. You should believe everything your insightful professors tell you. Okay? So if I say anything that is in contrast to anything they've told you, assume that they're correct. I want to give you that disclaimer. I came out of school, I got into accounting originally because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I figured I might as well have a practical degree to do something with. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? Because at least I had the good sense to realize I should do something, and I got into accounting. And after 10 years of doing that and getting answers from controllers that I thought were good, and I found out they weren't, and it wasn't any kind of, there was no creativity to it. And I wanted some creativity. So they talked about the importance of finance. After 10 years of just accounting, I got into applied finance, and that was my creative outlet. And I love it. And of course, what's happening now, after doing it for 20 years, is I think a lot of the powers that be, the SEC and others, are trying to grab that applied finance and pull it back into the accounting realm. And so they're removing some of that creative outlet. That's been a source of frustration. We talk about critical thinking. What my message to you today is really apply that critical thinking to your careers. If you don't already, you should apply that same critical thinking to what you want to do with your life. And we're going to talk about that a lot today, and I'll try to illustrate with some hopefully entertaining stories. And I want to make sure you can still hear me in the back. Okay? All right. In a nutshell, here's what I want you to think about. The whole of life is but a moment of time. It is our duty, therefore, to use it, not to misuse it. That was Plutarch. And said another way, there are only two ways one thing that Abby didn't tell you is I'm a very emotional person. So, okay. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. And I want you to see that everything about your life is a miracle. And if you have that attitude, it won't matter what you do, because you'll be able to be successful. And that's, in a nutshell, I want you to remember that. Albert Einstein, in addition to being a very, very bright guy, was very insightful. I don't know if any of you have read about his life or any books on him, but he said a lot of really cool things. And so I encourage you, as part of your studies, with all of the free time that you have, to spend some time and read about Albert Einstein, because he was very insightful on a lot of things like that. This is the most important question in that critical thinking that I think you want to ask yourself. What do I want to be when I grow up? Do you remember me saying that the discussion we were having had a lot of application to you personally as well? Well, again, you don't know exactly what it is, but I do look at what Apple is doing, and I do think that they're forgetting this very question, the million-dollar question. What do we want to be when we grow up? And maybe that's changed for them, and it can change for you too. But I think at this point in your career, you've got to ask yourself what you want to be. Not what you want to do, what you want to be. How about a thought leader? Anybody in here want to be a thought leader? If you're not a thought leader, you're a thought follower. And I think one of the greatest things that Dean Randall and Professor Landon are doing is teaching you how to be a thought leader, how to think critically, how to really ask yourself questions and be a thought leader. I don't think a thought leader is something that you aspire to become. I think it's something that you do become because of that critical thinking. So you don't just necessarily accept things as they are. As we go through the discussion of this million-dollar question, think about it in the context of our discussion about Apple, the Earl Scheib consultant. Now, I've used that in presentations before, and I kind of laugh because I date myself a little bit. I'll bet a lot of you in here don't know who the heck Earl Scheib is. Anybody, raise your hand if you know who Earl Scheib is. Okay, a couple of people. You never heard those commercials? I know they used to run them in Salt Lake. I'll paint any car for $99.95. Okay, does it sound familiar now? Look, if you want to be the low-price leader, that's the reputation you're going to convey. So what winds up happening, that was something at the front end of my career. There's no way I wanted to be that, because what you find then is people are going to expect that you're going to underprice everything you do. You'll compete based on price. We stopped advertising in the yellow pages, and the reason is I didn't like people that were coming to have us do work for them that were coming from the yellow pages. I don't want, as a professional, people getting to me through the yellow pages. And I'll even tell you this, I've had this discussion a lot with younger students. Social networking is very important to you, isn't it? And it's important to us too. I think a lot of you are getting off of Facebook because people my age are taking it over and realize what they're doing, right? Am I right? Yes. That's old news to you guys, but what are your Twitter folks now? But I don't even like social networking, me personally, as a way to promote my services, because it's not relationship driven. What I do in my job is very, very relationship driven. I want somebody coming to me because they think, rightly or wrongly, that I know this stuff better than anybody else. It's interesting, this past week, I was testifying in court, and boy, that's an interesting experience as well, because not only do you have to worry about the cross-examining attorney, but you have to worry about your own attorney throwing you under the bus and all kinds of things. And I'll be happy to tell you about those stories anytime you want. It's not for the faint of heart. So ask yourself, do you want to be the Earl Scheib consultant, or do you want to be somebody that, because you are a thought leader and because you are a critical thinker and you do know your profession, you can charge a premium billing rate, or maybe they come to you because you are the best at what you do? You've got to ask that question at the front end. Do you want to be a hired gun? Okay, I will tell you right now, hired guns can have very successful careers. People hire them all the time. What do I mean by a hired gun? That same court case that I was testifying in, the expert on the other side, who is somebody that I've known for a number of years, actually used to be one of his business partners, was trying to make the case, and wouldn't back down on it, that a CEO for a multi-million-dollar company would accept a salary of $26,000 a year. Does that strike anybody as outlandish? I told the judge that I have a daughter that just graduated from school and is working in social work, which is one of the lowest paying professions, and she makes more than that. Okay, so will that expert work again? Absolutely. Why? Because he'll say anything, and people will pay him money because he will say anything. Do you want to be that kind of? Do you want that to be your career? Do you want to be known as somebody who will say anything? So ask yourself that question. The ignorance is bliss professional. I'm going about my career. I don't care what's going on around me. That's another thing you guys are all getting right up front, learning how to be cognizant of what's going on around you. You've got to know that. And I would even extend it, obviously based on the things that I'm involved in, Does it just apply to reading the Wall Street Journal? What else are you going to read? I'm going to try to make this a little more interactive. Tell me about some of the things you read in your spare time. Anybody read Sports Illustrated? You just don't want to admit it. Okay. Rolling Stone, Spin. What are you reading besides your business text?
Comics.
ESPN.com, so I read those
Oh,
things.
okay, you're not reading that, hence the international paper. Yeah. I'm saying this kind of tongue in cheek. Comics are great. What I'm really saying is this, and I may be preaching to the choir. Have interests outside of your professional. Look at it holistically, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this later. But it's all work. You just get paid differently. It's work being a father. It's work being a husband. It's really work being a wife, to me. But it's all work. You just get paid differently. But it's good work. It's good. Be thinking about that. Family first, business owner. Does that appeal to anybody? You have to make sacrifices. There's a give and take. Regardless of which one of these you choose to be, there's give and take. But it's a question you have to ask yourself. The workaholic. Anybody consider themselves to be a workaholic that wants to admit it? I really think there's been a lot of discussion over the years about the differences in the generations. And I've had many discussions with my staff, and they typically already understand the value of time and balance and perspective more than I did at the beginning of my career. So I applaud you for that, and I think that's a great thing. But understand, however, that probably has trade-offs as well. So maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. The cog in the machine. There are a lot of opportunities to be that as well. The cog in the machine. I think that many times, at least when I graduated, the way to be the cog in the machine was to get a government job. Maybe that's still an opportunity for, I don't know, maybe some of you have government jobs. I don't know. But something to think about. So you've got to ask yourself and answer this question. I want to talk a little bit about balance. I've thought a lot about balance over the years. What balance is. I think balance is probably something that we would all like to have in our lives. Is there anybody in here that doesn't care about balance? Raise your hand. Okay. We all want balance, but I think it's important to know what balance is, because the only way we achieve it is in fleeting moments. Oh, there was balance. We're going, we crossed that balance line there, and then we're imbalanced again, and we've got it's about corrections. It's about constantly making those corrections. And so I think that's important at the front end to understand what balance is. It's not something you achieve and you have it forever. It's fleeting seconds of time in your lives, in your careers, where you achieve it, and then it's gone, because you're constantly, it's like driving down the road, constantly making corrections, making sure that you're moving in the right direction towards balance. I think where we get off in our careers is thinking that we're moving in the right direction and we really aren't. Okay, here's my top 10 list. My top 10 list of things we need to do to achieve balance. Okay, the first one is remembering the $1 million question, because ultimately, we'll look at that a little bit more here in a second, but you've heard the saying, you are what you eat. It's actually, you are what you want to eat. That's what you'll become. And so that's why it's important to remember what you want to become. How many of you in here really feel like you have a good handle on what you want to become? So there's, okay, there you go. What do you want to become?
I want to be an ambassador or diplomat.
Say again?
Ambassador or diplomat for the U.S.
Okay, outstanding. Do you have a contingency plan?
A little bit.
Okay. Then you raised your hand. What would you want to become?
Be an IT policy advisor.
A what now?
An IT policy advisor.
Okay.
So advising government.
Do you have a contingency plan?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to.
Professional golfer.
Okay. I'm not trying to dissuade any of you, and I think it's wonderful. I'm standing here before you today saying that I had no clue what I wanted to become, and I guess the message is, I don't know that you necessarily have to know what you want to become, but you do need to be able to answer that question, because I think once you can't answer that question, really you can be anything. The next on the top 10 list is whatever you are, be it wherever you are. It's kind of a variation on something somebody told me once, and I asked him. I remember I was stressing out about something, and I asked him what was his secret for not becoming stressed. He said, wherever I'm at, that's where I'm at. What does that mean? Well, I think that probably has particular relevance to everybody in here. I'm really impressed that nobody is typing or texting anybody on their cell phone. That's really impressive to me. And it's also very impressive when I'm at lunch and it's not happening. Wherever you're at, be there. Okay? That really is a very important business perspective. We talked about whatever you're going to be doing. I think relationships are going to be very important to you, and that, frankly, it gets back to our discussion on social networking. Maybe you can establish relationships on social networks. I don't know, but I think it's a lot easier to establish a relationship when you're talking to somebody face to face. I get people call me up on the phone, potential clients, and I always tell them, let's meet face to face, and I want to talk to them, because that's how you establish a relationship, and that also has some relevance as to our discussion of the market. We talked about short-term things and long-term things. What's going to have the most impact on your career? It's the long-term relationships. It's the long-term discussions that you have. Prioritize. Boy, how many of you have a plan to prioritize and are doing it right now in your lives? You probably think that you're really crazy busy right now, don't you? You ain't seen nothing yet. But it's important to do that. And the way I do it is this, and I developed this really mysterious way of doing things. I rank everything. We're going to talk about a little bit more detail about that in just a second, but I rank everything. And if it doesn't come into the right ranking, I cut it out. I'll tell you more about that on one of the future slides. Learn to say no. Learn to say no. There's nothing wrong with saying no. Sometimes you have to do that. Anybody a gardener in here? Anybody do any pruning of trees? You pay somebody to do it, I know. In the spring, or it's probably actually in the winter, you go to prune a tree, and you're looking at the tree and you're thinking, wow, all of these branches are nice and green and they're all wonderful, and the problem is sometimes you have to cut off some of those green branches so that the fruit in the spring will be that much better. And I think that's got some particular relevance to all of your careers as well. Sharpen the saw. We're going to talk a lot about that later, but for me, this music gig is sharpening the saw. You think, how did you find time to do that? I've got to find time to do that because it makes me more productive in everything I do. You've got to take time for yourself to be able to make yourself as productive as you can be. We talked about the importance of perspective on that very first slide. I had a health issue. Well, I had a stroke a little over 10 years ago, and it was related to Clarence D. And I was laying there in a hospital bed, and I was paralyzed on my left side. And when you are laying in a hospital bed and you can't move half of your body, you get perspective in a real hurry. And I hope I was always going to be the guy that never had to go through that to develop perspective. So I'm now transferring all of that to you, and you, so that none of you have to go through something like that to develop perspective. Get it before you have to go through it. This is kind of our office mission statement. Do it right, do it now, and do it with a smile. Enough said. Take some me time. Learn to laugh. We're going to get into a little bit more of these things. But I always tell my children, and if you said, okay, what is the one thing your dad has said over the last 30 years that drives you nuts because he said so much? It would be, a man that can laugh at himself will never cease to be amused. Okay? So, develop that in your own lives. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself. Early this morning, I was watching something about John McEnroe. John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. And they were saying, as John McEnroe has gotten older, the biggest change in him is that he can laugh at himself. You've got to be able to laugh at yourself and allow yourself, cut yourself some slack. Because if you can't cut yourself some slack, you're not going to be able to do it with anybody else. And of course, the last thing in the top 10 list is remembering the $1 million question. I can't stress that enough. We talked about that. All right. I want to just get into this a little bit more. The idea of being who you are wherever you're at. I mentioned the idea of it all being work, you just get paid in different ways. It's sure a lot easier to be the same person at the office than outside of the office, than trying to be somebody different. And you will find, you've probably taken management courses. You know, I've got to tell you, I think the only thing I know about management is just what I've learned through experience. The first academic C I got in my entire career was when I was a senior, and it was in management. I just couldn't get my head around it. But you've got to be the same person wherever you're at. You can use the same management concepts at home that you use in the office if they're the right management concepts. I didn't say this at the front end, but you're welcome, please. Ask any questions. If there are any questions or comments you have as we go along, feel free to raise them. Okay, prioritizing. Here's what I do. And this is very simple, but I rank everything that I'm doing or that I potentially am being asked to do in these 5 categories: physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, and intangible. You can rank everything in your life this way. You can rank your marriage this way. Boy, you better make sure you score this right. And maybe what I do is I rank it from 0 to 2. in every one of these categories, and I've got to have a score of at least 5 or above to continue to do it. So it's got to, I guess 5 is really technically failing, but I want to have 5 points in everything that I do. So, okay, most of the things we do professionally have nothing to do with the physical, but they will have, frankly, things to do with everything else: spiritual, emotional, financial, and tangible. I will tell you firsthand that what you're doing professionally very definitely can impact the spiritual nature that you're having, or emotional, and definitely financial. We tend, if there's one that we focus probably too much on, maybe I'm speaking of my generation, but what do you think the one is that we probably focus too much on? The financial. But how many times have you heard this in your young lives? If you find something that you like to do and you do it well, that financial piece is going to take care of itself. Where we get out of balance and out of whack is if we make that the end goal. That's, you know what, I'm not criticizing anybody in here that wants to do it that way. But I'm one of those people that didn't get that. And if you can get that now, it doesn't matter what you do. If you get everything else here in the right balance and prioritize it, the financial end will take care of itself. And I'm going to tell you that today and promise you that if you remember anything I tell you today, it's that one thing.
Kevin, I wonder if we could just have people share a few experiences around what they're trying to prioritize. I'll tell you what my struggle when I was a student was I need to make some money. And I need to make some money. I certainly wanted to have a social life. And I also wanted to do well in school. And so, right, sometimes it came down to a question of, should I participate in this activity in school? Should I not? How many hours should I work? Should I not? I don't know. Use your ranking system and talk us through how you might do it. Or somebody else jump in. How would you guys do that?
Sure. You want me to tell you what I've done first?
Yeah,
Give you a
that's great.
specific example? Okay. Okay, I have a perfect example for you. I'm routinely asked to present. I teach a lot about that applied finance. There aren't a lot of people that nationally that do business valuation full-time, and have done it for 20 years. So I speak a lot at state CPA societies, have a business valuation conference, so I'll speak there. And I generally, and let me tell you, I will, this presentation is a 10. So I will always be back here for that. But the state societies aren't necessarily. A lot of the times what I do is I require an honorarium. And so the financial would probably be, a 1 or a 2. But quite often I am asked to speak at the Tennessee Society of CPAs in Nashville. They don't pay me an honorarium, so I've got to give that a 0, right? Okay, so right off the bat, we're sucking wind on the financial side, but at least they pay my expenses, so maybe it's a 0.25 or a 0.5. Doesn't do anything for me physically. Whoops. Okay, we got to be careful with all the other ones here because we're in trouble. The spiritual, emotional, and the intangible. I'll tell you what. Has anybody been to Nashville? Music City? I'm a music guy. Man, that gives me solid 2s on everything else. So you see what it's doing. It's really getting me to focus on other things. And there are some things that I do. Right now, I am Governor Brewer, Arizona Governor Brewer, appointed me to the Board of Appraisal. And I am a public member, but I'm kind of a ringer. It's real estate. It regulates real estate appraisers. But I understand valuation concepts. It's really the same appraisal with a business. They're the same concepts as it is real estate. I'm sharing that. If I go through and rank, I'll tell you right now, okay, physical, probably is a negative one on that, but I have to give it a 0. Spiritual, boy, I'll tell you some stories. It probably doesn't do, if I go through and rank all of these, it's probably failing because it's a lot of stress. But see, that's where you kind of throw your ranking system out the window because I committed to do it. I think I'm uniquely qualified to be able to do it, and I'm kind of leading them in some rough times, so I'll do it anyway. Go ahead.
Did you put want under intangible?
Would I do what?
Put like ranking your want to do something because it might not cover any of the other things, but in the end you just want to do it.
You know what? That would be an intangible. Yes. And you can set it up however you want it. But the idea really is to recognize that there are a lot of other areas besides the financial. And okay, now you guys, Dean Randall, he was right on with this. Can I just call you Taylor?
That's what I asked the class to do.
Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing. You deserve so much respect. I just want
Not
to.
really. You'll find that if you're.
Okay, somebody in here, take something that you have in your life right now and use that and decide if you want to continue to do it. Taylor talked about that. Maybe, do you guys have any trouble at all with prioritizing?
I let my wife do it. Got much easier after I got married.
Go ahead.
So I struggle. I want to be a athletic trainer and
What do you want to be?
athletic trainer. So I want to work with like sports teams, hopefully it's professional or collegiate, which
Okay.
And it's hard because I know that in the future you'll be working long hours, but I'm really active. I love to run at least 2 hours a day, and I want to play tennis hopefully every day. I was telling my mom just recently, like there's no way I can keep doing that every single day because pretty soon I'll have to start shadowing athletic trainers, so that cuts out my time. I'm already running like in the middle of the night, which is impossible during the winter, and I feel like it's not making it sleep when I'm going down. So it's just your balance and all that, and school and work.
Sometimes you have to give up things that you don't want to, right? In fact, a lot of times you have to give up things that you don't want to, but it's all about it's about sacrificing, and it is. You know, the real thing, the very bottom point there is to remove the emotion from the process. You said something about doing, wanting to do something.
That's bullshit.
That is part of the intangible, but at the same time, I kind of think you have to remove the emotion from it. And it's a lot easier, me being the emotional guy, I'm telling you to remove the emotion from it. But if you can look at it objectively, and the ranking is one way to do that, you don't have to do it this way, but however you do it, I encourage you to figure out some system to where you can look at all of the things that you do. Yes.
So I just have a couple of questions. So I'm a musician. I like writing music on guitar. And so in that ranking system, I definitely want to, it's a priority, but I don't ever know how much time to put into stuff, if that makes sense. There's a lot of priorities, kind of have to spread yourself between them all. Is there a way that you found that manages the time you spend on certain things that are still priorities?
Well, for me, finding the time to do things has usually meant giving up time to do other things. And It also means doing things at the right time. I don't know if you're married, I don't know if you have a family, but there are a lot of things that I'm doing now I couldn't do them when I was raising in the heat of battle, so to speak. My youngest is 20 and on a mission in Angola. My oldest is 29, and I've got a couple in between there. I didn't have time to do all of this stuff then, and I do now. And so maybe that's the other message is there's a time and a season for everything. You know, I don't know what your family situation is, but if you don't have any of that right now, maybe it's time to spend more time doing it. Just because you have to set something aside for a while doesn't mean you can't get back into it. I mean, I've been playing guitar since I was 19, and I always wanted to do a CD. But when did I do it? You know, I was 52. So you can't lose sight of the things you want to do either. And sometimes that prioritizing is just shoving it aside for a while. I'm probably, you know what, I'm not telling you guys anything mysterious. You know this. And you're probably thinking, okay, what does this have to do with anything I'm doing professionally? It has everything to do with what you're doing professionally. All of this stuff has direct impact on what you are doing and what you're going to be doing. Did that answer your question? Okay, because what I try to do is at least answer it or try to dodge it. Give it a shot. We talked about learning to say no. Very important. Everybody's got their thing. Okay? What really hit this home to me is my family was out of town. I was going to see a movie, and it was probably, I got out, and I'm going to say it was 11 o'clock. And I walked out of the movie theater, and there was this real long line of people there, and I thought, well, I know there's not a movie that just came out today, so I wonder what they were all standing in line for. And I asked him, and this guy said, well, the new Michael Jordan shoe comes out at 12:01, so we're all standing in line so we can be the first to buy those shoes. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so you'll be able to say you're the first people that bought them. Do you get interviewed for that, or do you get a royalty, or what? Anyway, but I thought to myself, everybody's got their thing. And you know something? That's so important to remember that, because it helps you not to judge others as well. But it also has some career importance, because you've got to know what your thing is. How many of you feel like you know what your thing is? What is it? What's your thing?
Mine's a little controversial. I think I really like thinking critically about politics, about the world around us, questioning things. And I know, like, in the business environment, we're told kind of stay away from stuff like that, especially if it's controversial. So it's kind of hard to balance.
Have you ever told them to stay away from political stuff?
No, let's launch into abortion right now.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. So politics is your thing. That's great. I was kind of thinking to myself as we were talking about the Wall Street Journal, True Confessions. I probably stay away from current events more than I should, admittedly, but the reason is it stresses me out so much because there's so much stupidity. Anyway, but the good thing is I pretty much, I couldn't tell you exactly what the risk, the 10-year treasury was, but I wrote down 2.75, so I had a pretty good feel for where it's at. And I didn't know exactly what had happened with international paper, but I knew that print media is becoming a thing of the past, so I kind of intuitively, so kind of had a feel for it. But I think that's great. What's your thing?
Well, that's the problem. Is that I don't know, and I feel that most people in this room don't know, but do you think that you have one specific thing that's your thing? Is that evaluation or music, or?
You know what? To me, they're the same thing. That's the same thing. For me, it's the ability to use both sides of my brain. That's my thing. And it took me a while to figure that out, but that's my thing. I want, we've all been blessed with a strong brain. That's why you're in this class. And making the most of it, that's what you're doing. That's my thing. So.
Hey, I want to hear what Al's thing is.
What's that?
I want to hear what Al's thing is.
Al, what's your thing?
Just read some Wall Street Journal.
Get into it, baby. Memorize the stock value. Well, it changes over time, right?
Say again?
It changes over time.
It does.
So sometimes it's get good at something, right? And then after you get good at something, then is that enough? And where do you go from there? How many stores did you put on the building? So now it's do something different. And I don't really know. My wife thinks it's don't give up, right? So you hit 65, and everybody's checking out. And she said, oh, it's great to let go. But I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe that's it. I don't have it proved like that.
I do think that what has worked for me the best is to do different things, but have them build on the knowledge that you've learned with the other.
Yeah, that's the next story on the building.
Yes.
So you've done this, you've done this, you've done that. And I've got buddies who say, oh, I've been there, I've done that. Well, okay, so then what's it going to do for you, right? So it's about having some kind of purpose.
Sure, absolutely.
So, on Friday, it's be here and be in this and relate to the people here. That's because it's real easy. I'm an introverted guy, right? So it's real easy for me just to kind of check out. If I go run, if I go run 10 miles, nobody around, that is, mind is working just right. So, well, maybe for me. But it's different now for me than it was when I was in school, man. It was just hang on, baby. Try to get to Friday.
As you've heard, I have a passion for music, and that's your thing. And I don't make any money doing it, but talking about the building, the artists that I speak to really appreciate. I mean, I had you guys won't know half these people. Noah Paul Stuckey, who was part of Paul American. I interviewed him, put the article together, and he sent me an email and said, "You're right, dude." So the artists appreciate the insightful questions, I think, that I ask them, and they're not, "Hey, what's your favorite song?" or it's trying to get inside their head. Well, to me, that's an extension of the critical thinking that I apply analytically with my business writing. So you build on it. Go ahead.
Off of your comment, it seems like you have like a couple things that are your thing, and I feel the same way. Like I play the trumpet, and I'm on the water polo team now, and I'm in the business building, but I'm taking this class at the same time I'm taking economics classes, and a lot of other things that I'm doing that are my thing. And Is it a problem that I have? Because I definitely feel that all of these things are important, but I wouldn't be able to consider one of them
Well, you see, I don't think it's a problem. That's why we're having this discussion, really, because there are so many moving parts here. That leads into prioritizing. You could have a lot of different things. Maybe you have to cut one out for a while. But more than anything, I really think this hour we're spending here together is really about applying that critical thinking to your careers. I said that at the front end. That's really what I'm trying to get you to do, more than anything. Yes?
What do you do if your thing gets in the way of your work or anything else? Like hypothetically, what if I was writing song experience in one of my more boring classes?
Not this one.
Not this one.
Make sure.
I think that's probably.
Boy, that is a very, very tough question.
I think happiness is figuring that out.
Yeah,
How you get those two aligned.
that goes back to the balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, that's it. It's finding that balance. If you ask it a different way, is there anything wrong with writing a song in a foreign class? Again, going back to everything they say is right, listen to them. I'm going to tell you, you know, inspiration for a song, when you're having it, if songwriting is important to you, that's when you have to strike while the iron's hot. But if writing that song means you're getting a D or an F because you missed paying attention to the lecture, all of these things tie in. You got to find the balance. And I also said, wherever you're at, be there. That's part of it too. You know, maybe you can figure out a way to write down just some basic thoughts on what the inspiration is telling you, and not write the whole thing out. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, oh gee, because you never know where the inspiration is going to hit you. You just write down the idea, the concept, and then you do the lyrics later. It could be that simple. Yes.
I just have a thought. I feel like a lot of people overthink this, and I think that you can have multiple things, and sometimes they have a common theme. So like, if you're trying to schedule things out that take up a lot of your time, a lot of times, if it's important to you, if it's important to you, you'll make time for it. So
Right.
like, I'm a runner as well, like other people have mentioned in this room, and I made time for it because it's important to me. And I think that that's not necessarily my thing. I think my thing as a general rule is people. And I like talking to people, working with people, helping people. And I think if you generalize it more, it's easier to figure out rather than being so specific and listing all these things that you really like to do. It can be more general than that, and that'll help you prioritize.
I think that's a great point, and I will tell you that early on in your career, you probably have to be more detail-oriented, almost without exception. And then as your career goes on, I mean, in most of the work I do now, I'm looking at it at a very high level, because you develop the ability to look at something for 5 minutes and know if it's right or not. In fact, detail stuff drives me nuts. But if you have the ability and the skills and the gift to be able to look at things from the big picture now, all the better. But you gotta be careful with that too, because when you guys get out of school, you may have to take that job where you gotta get your foot in the door and you've got to do the detail stuff. So you don't want to be too big for the position either. You have a comment? Or were you just, okay. Okay, sharpen the saw. I'm a runner too. You know, if you look at that picture, that's my son on the in the middle. On the right, that's the one that's in Angola now. But okay, I shouldn't have put that picture up there. every year, there is a run in Phoenix in honor of Pat Tillman. Some of you probably know who Pat Tillman is. He was NFL football player, fought in Afghanistan, and was killed. And they have a run, Pat's run, and we do that as a family every year. And that is one of the high points of my year every year, because we get together as a family and do this together. And you know, the interesting thing, reading about people in your spare time, Einstein, read about Pat Tillman, because Pat Tillman, this is probably a discussion ahead outside of this, but Pat Tillman was one of the most spiritual men that I knew, but he was an atheist. So, you know, it just, there's so much wrapped up in that. So many lessons about not being judgmental and all the other things we talked about. That's part of sharpening the saw. Anybody a Steve Martin fan? Okay, this, interestingly, the guy sitting next to me, you can see him right under the arrow to my right. His name is Kevin. Kevin is one of my very best friends, and coincidentally is also an atheist. But Kevin and I will have discussions on politics. He is completely at another end of the spectrum as I am, but we like the critical thinking, and we talk about things. We talk about religion, and that was at Red Rocks. Anybody been to Red Rocks? If you haven't been there, put that on your bucket list. Sometime in your life, you gotta go see a concert at Red Rocks. But I actually saw Steve Martin there back in the mid-'70s when he was a comedian, and of course now he's a bluegrass / comedian. Very good, but that's part of, you know, learning to laugh at yourself. And here I'm at the ACM Awards in Las Vegas talking to Larry Gatlin. You guys don't know half of these people, but Larry's a big country western performer. Here you go. There you go. Pete Rhodes is a U fan. How do you like that? And okay, I had to show you this. Jim McMahon. There's got to be somebody in here that's a closet BYU fan. I know. Alice Cooper has a celebrity golf tournament every year, and I play in it. And this was hanging out with Jim McMahon, who's now suffering from dementia, unfortunately. That's probably why he was standing next to the University of Utah. There's Alice. The music thing for me has been so great, just because it is. It's a creative outlet, and I run into some really interesting people. Okay, none of the older people say this. Anybody know who this is?
Ringo Starr.
Who?
Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr.
It's Bernie Taupin. Anybody know who that is? Nobody knows who that is?
I know who he is.
Anybody, okay.
In the back
All
knows.
right. Anybody heard of Elton John?
Yeah. Yep.
Have you heard any Elton John songs? Tell me one.
Crocodile.
I can't hear you guys.
Crocodile Rock.
Okay, Crocodile Rock. Who wrote the lyrics?
I think it's that guy.
Bernie wrote it. Name another song. Daniel? Bernie wrote them, the lyrics. You name an Elton John song, Bernie wrote the lyrics. Elton's the music, the melody guy. Bernie. And that was at he had an art show. Talk about doing your thing and doing the building. Bernie Taupin is pictures now. So go figure. Okay, talking about developing perspective and being grateful, there's always someone who makes more money than you. There will always be somebody that makes more money than you. There's always going to be somebody that's more successful than you are, and most importantly, has it worse than you. On those days when you're struggling with all the homework you have, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit everything in, and you haven't got your system for prioritizing, and you don't know how to say no, just be thinking about something. There's got to be somebody out there that has it worse off. And I'm wading into this one knowing I'm not going to be able to get through this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I was in New York. Whenever I'm traveling, I try to figure out if there are some shows that I can go see and cover the music and stuff. Have you heard of the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp? They allow people to pay like $10,000 to go and perform with people like Alice Cooper, and you spend the whole week, and the end of the week you perform with them on stage. Well, this is at the end of the week. I was there actually covering the show. That guy in the middle, I can't think of his first name, Hudson, Kate Hudson's dad, used to be married to Goldie Hawn. That's the guy in the middle. The guy to the right was at this camp, and he paid all this money, and he did it because he had a son that died in a car accident while he was drunk. And Jeff is his name. I thought that story was so inspiring because he basically had been a recluse and had shut down until he did this camp. And basically it was therapy for him. There's a guy that's got it worse than me. Every year in Tucson, there is they have a World Golf Championship. Top 64 golfers come to Tucson. I have volunteered that, I don't know, 5 years now. But I had a brother-in-law that lived up here named Kevin. In fact, I have two brother-in-laws named Kevin. Kevin and my wife's sister would come down every year for the tournament. And Kevin he knew everything about golf. Golf was his thing. I mean, it was seriously his thing. And me, I kind of follow it, so it would be great. He and I would go to this tournament, and we'd be standing there, and I'd like to get one of the flags and have the golfer sign it. So I would be standing there, and I would say, "Hey, Kevin, who's that?" And he would tell me who the golfer is. It's a lot easier to ask them by name than saying, "Hey, you." So Kevin, he'd come down, and we do that every year. Never was able to, I was never able to get all 64. Well, Kevin, a little over 2 years ago, died unexpectedly of a heart attack. Hadn't had any problems. And so the following year, golf tournament, I was on a quest. I was on a serious quest. And I don't want to bore you with all of the things that happened, but there were 10 things that happened that if I'd been someplace a split second later, I would have missed it. But I got all 64 of them to sign. The lady next to me, her name is Faith Tanner. Faith, she and her husband had decided that they were going to, in a golf season, they were going to volunteer at every PGA event in that season. That's a bunch. And they had it all planned, and he basically died of brain cancer very quickly and unexpectedly. Faith decided to do it alone, by herself. And so, I mean, my story is nothing compared to Faith's, but she wound up doing it, and so we were kind of kindred spirits at this golf tournament. We were both volunteers. And she was so excited when she saw that I'd gotten all 64. I mean, you know, another example of somebody that has it worse. Will almost never put off till tomorrow. That's probably one of the lessons here as well. You just never know what's in front of you. If you can't fill somebody else's cup and yours is draining, it's okay to be selfish once in a while. Once in a while. Okay, here you go. Learn to laugh. If you don't know how to laugh, figure it out. And I said this earlier. The man or woman that can laugh at themselves will never cease to be amused. No one has ever died from laughing too much. And this is just kind of my personal, I suppose, one of my top 5. I know Brian Regan is big stuff in Salt Lake City. Because he's funnier than crud without dropping F-bombs. He's really funny. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's really funny. Kevin James is pretty funny. Steve Martin is still funny. Even though he's playing bluegrass, he's still really funny in between. And of course, you know, is there a funnier movie than Dumb and Dumber?
I think Polly Shore put out a few movies that might be funnier.
Okay, and remember the $1 million question. If you guys start thinking about that, there's my family. They give me so much crap about this game. Do you wonder why? My one grandson there. I love this. It takes a very long time to become young. Pablo Picasso. And you know, that may be the most important thing. There's this whole thing is a presentation of important things, but figure that out. It's taken me years and years and years. I will be 57 next week, and I'm just now figuring it out. My wife, of course, may not enjoy me being young quite so much. You know, I guess it's a guy thing or something. You've got to be immature and laugh. And yes, let's see, how much more detail? I don't care how old you are. It's like my son says, there are certain words that no matter how old you are, they're fun, right? And I won't go into those, but you know the ones I'm talking. All right, that's it. And I appreciate you guys listening to this. And it was probably one of the more different presentations that you've had, but hopefully you got something out of it. And